Hey guys, welcome to Walsham Weekly. So this week it's just going to be a super relaxed episode where I am just here alone and I am just talking about investing. So I apologize if I have a lot of sniffly sick sounds because I'm quite sick. I've been sick for quite a while, but it's really hitting me right now. See, I just sound a bit like a country singer, to be honest, but yeah.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than
Everybody
you.
has time. Stop watching Lost.
I love what I do, and that's why I'm doing what I love.
I'd first like to talk about what is investing. What are you talking about, James? When people say investing, they think, buying a house and then flipping it, or blah, 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 buying a car, I don't know, buying all sorts of things and then doing that, or completely investing in a startup, kind of things like that. What I personally mean by investing is the only thing that I really do is I invest in the stock market. I'm from New Zealand, so I invest in the New Zealand stock market, which I think I'm incredibly lucky to invest in because it is a incredibly powerful market in my opinion, and it really does have a lot of upside. So yeah. I'd also like to say this is sort of a guide for people that don't know how to invest or don't know what they should be doing or if they can invest or how or anything like that. So yeah, that's what this is for. I have quite strong opinions about investing because I thought about investing back when I was quite young, because I always think, basically the idea for me with investing is I see it as a golden ticket to riches. If you can get good at saving money and get good at investing and you can get good at just managing your money well, then you can literally do anything, because eventually, if you start early, like right now, I'm incredibly lucky because I live at home with my parents. They pay for all my food, my housing, all that kind of stuff. I pay for most of my other things, but most of the things that really are essential I have done for me. So right now I'm taking advantage of that. And right now I'm trying to invest as much as I can and save as much as I can, because the moment I'm in the big bad world, it might be a lot harder. I don't know what it's like in the big bad world, that's what I'm trying to prepare myself for. But the thing is, for some people, it's hard. It's impossible to get $1,000 to go and invest it. So that's where it is hard. So that's why I think this is why I'm either going to call this investing for teenagers or investing for dummies or something like that. If you start at 18, I'm going to try and avoid doing mathematics in this, but if you start at 18 and you get good, because in New Zealand you need to be 18, even if you start at 17 just by practicing, just by pretending that you bought $1,000 worth of something or whatever. And yeah, basically if you start early, compound interest, which is basically, say you earn a dollar's worth of interest in 1 year, and then year 2, that dollar will also earn interest. So say the interest is 10% per year, that dollar will earn you an extra 10%. So it'll earn you 10 cents. So if we continue that the next year, that 10 cents and that $1 and whatever else you have deposited will also earn you money. So then that 10 cents generates an extra cent, and the dollar generates another 10 cents, and then, etc. And it goes on and on and on. And that increases. It's a curve. It goes up and up. The ratio of what you've actually saved, say you've saved $1,000. If you just leave that there, the first year, it'll increase by, say, $100. The next year, $110. And then it just increases exponentially from there. So mathematically and just logic-wise, and if you completely ignore mathematics, it makes sense to start early. 1, because of compound interest. 2, because if you start early, 1, you're learning the skills, and 2, you're setting yourself up while you don't have that many expenses. So if you're in high school and you can save $200, I don't know, every month, maybe that's kind of hard for you, maybe $10 a week. You can, if you have a job in high school, or even if you just have a paper round, or even if you just have some way to make $10 a week, and say you make $20 a week and you want to spend $10 with your friends. Yeah, go and do that, but save that $10. So what is investing? Investing, for me, is investing in the stock market. How do you invest? To invest in something, you buy a share. So a share is a tiny portion of a company. Let's pretend that this podcast is worth $100. if I was going to do the IPO and the initial public offering and turn this podcast into a publicly traded, company, then I would have 100 shares, each worth $1. And then someone could go and buy 10 shares and they'd own 10% of Wonky Walshami. Of Walsham Weekly. So yeah, that is kind of how shares work. I hope that made sense. So a stock is like the general term. So if I wanted to say, oh, I have stock in Auckland Airport, or oh, I have stock in this, stock in that. So yeah, basically the idea is you buy a little piece of a company. Say you buy a little piece of a company and it is currently valued at $6. So you buy one share of Auckland Airport, which is currently valued at $6. And let's say Auckland Airport has a good year, and then 1 year later you sell it and now it's worth $7. So now it's worth $7, right? So you've just made $1 profit in 1 year. That's something like, I don't know, I think it's around 13%. I know that because I did that. I bought it at like $6.35 and I sold it at $7.35, making $1 per share, which is quite a decent amount really, and that was like the average. This is why investing in the stock market is so good, because the thing is, mathematically it's incredibly hard to lose. If you invest in the very worst year and you get out on the very worst year, if you get in and out on the worst times possible, if you average that over like 25 years, you lose like 2%. That's all. That's nearly how much you lose if you just leave your money in the bank and you somehow negate interest. The interest you're getting in the bank is negligible. Like you're getting like 1%. Unless, say, one of my accounts I have 4.2% if I don't touch it. But I always touch it. I almost never get the interest from that account, just because I am stupid and I just keep touching that damn account. It's pretty annoying, but yeah. Effectively, one thing you have to realize, and you can, like, I've had people argue with me about this because they don't understand how inflation works. Because inflation is basically, say there's $100 in the world, and all these $100 are worth the Auckland Sky Tower. So that's what they're worth. And then someone goes and adds $10 more. But now those $110 are all worth the Sky Tower. So now each dollar is effectively worth less. So each dollar is worth 10% less because 10% has been added, roughly. So that's sort of how inflation works. And that is happening. So more money is being created, average. Like more money is being created. So generally we're losing about 1 to 3% per year. Right now inflation's pretty low. It's like 1.22% or something, which is relatively low. But you've got to also realize interest and inflation sort of match each other. So like if you used to think that by keeping your money in the bank, eventually if you just left $1,000 in there, in 10 years time, that's $1,000, and maybe that's $2,000 in 10 years. But you've got to realize that it keeps up with inflation almost exactly. It's exactly the same as inflation, really, because if it wasn't, then there would be no point keeping your money in the bank. Like it would be horrendous if inflation was higher than interest, because then you're literally losing a lot of money. You'd be losing 1 to 3% per year, not of the amount of money, but the value of your money. The buying power of your money will go down every year if your money does not increase. But when you are invested in the stock market, every year, the average return of the stock market, if you invest in something that is very safe, and if you do it smartly and if you don't let your emotions control you, and you listen to what the pros have to say, people like Warren Buffett, people like, I forgot his name, Graham, I forgot his last name. Yeah, Graham, I'm pulling a blank all these times. Tony Robbins, he's pretty good, but I think he's a bit like guru-y. I am not your guru, eh? Yeah, so that's kind of like, so the minimum return you're really going to get is like 7%. On average. Some years you might get 20% back, but that's unlikely. Most years you're going to get like 7% back. Or some years you're going to get nothing back, or you're going to lose money. But the thing you've got to realize is, say you buy $100 worth of stock And in 5 years' time, it's worth $50. But then in 10 years' time, it'll probably be worth whatever 7% annually is. So that would be something like, let me just do the maths. I'll do a tiny bit of maths. So $100 times 10 years at 7%. That is nearly doubled. So in 10 years, your money doubles. Now with inflation, your money would be, I think, something like 10% less valuable at today's current inflation. Today's current rate of inflation. It would be something more like 15%, probably even 20% if inflation does increase, which it will when there is going to be a decline in the market, which there should be soon, because one thing that is the risky thing about investing in 2017, and I think this is something that I need to cover, is the market has been going up for it's been ridiculous, like the last nearly 10 years. So there were these two crashes that happened, and there's been tons in the 20th century. So we're currently in the 21st century. There was tons in the 20th century. The major two that have happened in the 21st century were the dot-com boom, which was in 2001, and 2008, which was to do with mortgages being rated higher, being valued more than they're actually worth, because so many people defaulted, and the thing was, so many mortgages, the money from one mortgage was used to create 10 more mortgages, and then it was sort of like a pyramid scheme, and it all just collapsed at once. And there's this thing called the S&P 500. It basically values the American market. So you've got to realize the New Zealand market and the American market are quite different, but they do follow. We follow in suit, because the USA does control most of the global market, and we do follow them. Like if the USA's market crashes 20% in one day, we're probably going to go down as well. Maybe not as much, maybe more, but yeah. So, and also say if someone we trade with a lot, like I think we trade with China heaps. If the Chinese market crashes, our market will probably crash a lot as well, because they're not going to be able to pay as much for our product. We export tons of stuff, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the S&P 500 basically values the market, and yeah, the market decides whatever the price is. The market is sort of like this collection of every single investor on the planet. They pick the price of everything. So yeah, that's kind of why investing in 2017 is scary, because the market is kind of overvalued right now. So in 2007, we were at something like, I think the S&P 500 was at like 2.6. Now it's at like 7 point something. Like I might be way off with that, and I might be quoting like New Zealand, like the NZ50 or something, but yeah. So that's why investing in 2017 is scary, because you don't know what's going to happen if you do invest and then it does crash. Like you might invest and then the next day it crashes. It might not. It might keep going straight up for the next 5 years, but it probably won't. And that's the scary thing. But the thing that Tony Robbins outlines that I do quite agree with, but what you've got to realize is I've just researched a lot. I haven't actually got that much experience. I've never gone through a crash, so I might be talking out of my ass here. So, but I think I know my stuff. I've done 50% in the first year, which is quite good. Most people do like 10, 20 maybe. But I've been in a very lucky year. But what you've got to realize is in 2017, if it does crash and you had, say, $1,000 worth of Auckland Airport, and it crashes all the way down, it crashes to 60% of $1,000, so now it's worth $600. That's a lot. It's crashed a lot, but say it that crash would probably occur over something like 6 months. If it doesn't crash fast, but you know that the market is declining, that it is, I think it's called a bear market. That's the down market. I don't know. I think bear and bull. I don't know the difference. I don't know which is which. I just say up market, down market, or like I'm pulling a blank on all the words right now. But say if there's everyone reporting that right now we're going down, and you really do agree with it, and you've done your research, then you can kind of assume that there's probably going to be say if you can sell and it's only dropped 3% from $1,000, that's like 970, 900. So you've lost $30 plus transaction cost. That's one thing that when you're trading with a small amount of money, like I am, transaction cost is the hardest thing to beat. So yeah, I think I'll stop talking about how it's dangerous in 2017. Basically, if it crashes in 2017, just hold on, because that company probably is still worth what you bought it for. And after a crash, there will always be a boom, so the market will always go up. So if you do buy at $1,000, crashes to 600, and there's nothing you can do, you can't sell it like 900, then I reckon just stay in. Stay in for the long haul. Just stick it out. If you need that money, no. Just stay in. Stay in for as long as you can hold out. And maybe once it gets up to $1,000, you sell it and you get out. Or you wait until 2 years into the boom and maybe it's worth 2,000 now, which is a hell of a lot more because, yeah, like you can make incredible amounts of money. So there's this company in New Zealand called A2 Milk. Their code is ATM. So at the start of this year, they were worth like 1.52. Now they're worth $6. So in like 52 weeks ago, they were worth 1.52. Now in 1 year, they've increased 400%. So if you invested $5,000, you now have $20,000. That's a huge increase in 1 year. That's the power of the market right now, because if you do get in and then you get out before it crashes, you're golden. But it's kind of like, dancing on ice or playing soccer on ice, weightlifting on ice. It has benefits, but like also don't be scared of investing. Like if you've got to realize I don't think people should be putting their money in a plan that invests it for them. Like I don't agree with KiwiSaver. I think it's good, but like legit, it's okay, not legit, but like it's not that efficient. It doesn't get you massive returns. They invest like 17.5% of your money, which is a tiny amount. Like it's a safe amount, and it's a really safe amount, but it's a really small amount. So it's like, yeah, So some ways to start investing. If you don't have a lot of money, there's one thing in New Zealand that you can do. There's probably one in America. There's probably one in the UK. It's called Sharesies. So Sharesies is basically this program or this app or this site. I don't know what it is. I've never even tried it, but I've looked into it. And basically, say if you have $15 spare, you have $100 spare, you have $200 spare. That amount is not enough to beat the transaction cost unless you get a huge return. Like if you get 400% return, booyah, you've bet the transaction cost easily. But if you only have that amount of money and you're probably not gonna beat the transaction cost or not beat it by much, and it just wouldn't be worth it. But with Sharesies, basically they make it so the transaction cost is quite small. It's for people that don't have a lot of money, but they want to start investing. Personally, it's not what I do because I can beat the transaction cost. I'm lucky enough to do that. But they focus more on investing for the person who doesn't want to go and research a company, who doesn't want to take that risk that the single company does present, because that does present a lot of risks. And the risks that it presents are sort of when you are investing in one company, say with Samsung. They were a beautiful company. They were going straight up. They're like the #1 most valued company in Korea or something. Like it's ridiculous. But then Samsung Galaxy Note 7 thing happened. Their stock crashed heaps. They lost like 20%, like something like that. I don't know, but yeah, they lost heaps. And that's the risk that a company is, because say Auckland Airport, say, oh, that's relatively safe because it is something that we always need. It's not dependent really. Like air travel is not going away anytime soon. Maybe in 20 years we won't need it, but right now it's pretty useful, So that's what I think you should be doing. If you have, basically they say if you give $5, then you maybe pay 20 cents transaction cost. And that $20, that $5, you invest that into a fund. A fund is basically a collection of like 500 stocks. So you don't have to pay the transaction cost for all the stocks, for every single stock. You pay for that fund because that fund owns all those stocks. So you're buying a little bit of that fund. And basically that means that you now have a little bit of that fund and you have a little tiny piece of every single stock in that fund. So then on average, they're all going to go up because basically what you're doing then is you're trusting the stock market. You are trusting that the market will go up. And say the market does go up, but then it crashes 20%. You haven't lost 20%. Your money is still worth the same. Like if you take your money out, then you've lost. But if you keep your money in, then your money is still, well, that those stocks are just as valuable. You just need to keep it in. So yeah, with Sharesies, I would recommend you just like treat it like your KiwiSaver. Like if you're putting $25 a week into KiwiSaver, then I recommend you just move to Sharesies. Just pick 2 different funds or 1 different fund. And save up $5 a week, and then when you get to $50, put it in, and then that reduce the transaction cost a little bit, and that does help out a little bit. So yeah. So I'm now going to go over my approach, what I recommend, what some other people do recommend. So I wouldn't really recommend this unless you have something like $1,000. Even that might be too small. Like if you have $2,000, one thing that I like, I want my kids to do this. If you're a kid in high school and you are feeling peer pressure to get a car because it's cool as, yeah, but do you know what's cooler? What's cooler is if you don't get a car and you say if you're going to spend $4,000 on a car, you've got to include gas money. So you can basically call the gas money negative interest. So you lose 15% a year, plus your car devalues, give that another 5%, whatever. Like those are just guesstimates, probably pretty accurate. So that's basically that. So you could, if you saved money and you spent maybe, say, I don't know how much people spend on travel a year. Let's say you spend 5% of that on travel a year, like just on busing, not on gas, you just bus and ferry everywhere. You'd save so much money just because if you invest that $4,000 instead, you've made so much more money. So if you have at least $2,000, even just $1,000, I wouldn't recommend with anything less than $1,000 because I assume this is relatively universal in New Zealand and also probably in America. It's probably a similar number, like for $1,000. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's probably $20 in US. But in New Zealand, the transaction cost every time you move your shares. So say you buy some shares, $30. You sell some shares, $30. I believe that is consistent up until around $5,000. Then it increases they add a percentage on top of it. Like it's $30 plus 0.1% or something like tiny. Like the transaction cost is mainly only an issue at the beginner levels. But I don't know what the value goes up to until it increases. So yeah. If you had that amount of money, you can do what I would recommend is you learn how to invest in companies. You could invest in a fund then. That's completely fine. If you invest in a good fund, you've done good. But what I like to do and what I think is fun, challenging, I actually do quite enjoy it. That's why I really do it. Like the money's actually cool, but like I used to think this was a load of shit when people said this, but I really do enjoy it because it's cool seeing your money just increase because you've made a smart decision that is incredibly risky. Not incredibly risky, but it has inherent risk to it. But if you do it correctly, and I don't think there's that much risk really. But when picking you basically need to go and educate yourself about investing, how to invest. I personally like to do value investing or company investing or even event trading. So value investing is basically you pick a company or you buy a company when it's not worth as much when the market doesn't value it as much as it's actually worth. So say United Airlines, when they did that thing where basically they pulled a guy off the plane and there was a whole media fiasco, their company did not lose value, but they did on the stock market. So they crashed a bunch of money because people thought this would cripple the United Airlines. But like, let's be real, it's just one thing. People started to realize that any airline can do that. It's happened multiple times with other airlines, and it wasn't really a huge deal. It was just a media fiasco. Maybe you can hate me for saying that, but it's what it was. So that company didn't actually lose value. So now that company is undervalued. So if you buy that company, and I know the guy from College Info Geek, he actually did buy that company and he made a significant return. He made like 15% in like 3 weeks, which is a damn good return if you do ask me. So that's a lot of money. Say that's if you invested $1,000 in that, minus $60, so $940. But then say it increased by 15%, you've made $150 minus 60, $90 in 3 weeks. That doesn't sound like a lot. Like if you give $2,000, then it's $300 minus 60. So like the more money you have, the less the transaction cost actually matters. So yeah. I hope I'm not just blabbing on. If I am and you're listening to this, please message me on Instagram and tell me that my podcasts are boring and why, or something like that. I'd love some feedback. Also leave me a review. Subscribe to the podcast. So yeah. So personally, I like to do that. I buy one company. So far, I've only owned 2 companies at once. And I've made some very lucky returns because I have got lucky. I've only made like 5 trades. And one of them was a bad trade. The rest were, 2 of them were really, like I made like $100. Like it was a pretty small amount. And then the other 2 were really good. One was like $300 off of only investing 1.2 grand. So that was like a really good investment. And then the other one, I got really, really lucky, like super lucky. I made like 50% on that. I was incredibly lucky. And then one of the strategies that I learnt about, and then I actually applied it the day after I learnt it, was I had a decent holding in there, and then I knew it went up by it was 1.3, and then it went up to 1.8, and then I bought in again. So I spent more money I actually sold my other stocks, the ones that went up to 300. I sold them there, and I did actually lose a bit of money there because they went up more, and I lost more potential gains. So yeah, it was kind of like picking between the golden fucking tickets. It was pretty good. I think I picked the best ticket though. So I reinvested there, and then they soared all the way up to 2.8. It was quite a risky investment because I didn't know what's going to happen. No one really knows what's going to happen with that stock. It's a scary stock. It's literally a gold mine. I believe, because I have some people around me that really do believe in that stock, and I do personally believe in that stock because if you do the calculations, it's worth a lot more than what it's valued. But it is a gold mine, and the thing is, once it's been mined, I guess it's all the money's gone. So that's the bit where I'm skeptical. But maybe I just don't know the mathematics on that, or maybe I just don't know the theory, because maybe it's worth the same amount it's worth in reality at the very end, just because of how it works. Well, I don't know. I have no clue how that works. Maybe they just go and use that money to invest in another mine, or they give extreme dividends. I have no clue. But yeah. So yeah, basically that's what I think you should do personally. If you have $2,000, go do your research about a company. One thing is, don't ever fall for anyone's... If you go on, there's this website called ShareTrader NZ. It's a forum. Basically, what everyone is trying to do there is push their own agenda. So don't listen to anyone. Don't trust anyone. Even if they seem like your friend. But if they really are your friend, and they've been your friend for years, and they recommend you invest in this thing that is a publicly traded company, not some random scam or some random thing that looks kind of dodgy. If it gives you a bad gut feeling, just stick back and wait until... See if what they're saying is going to happen does happen. If it does start to happen, then maybe get in. But think about getting in. But ask people for advice. I used to think I'd give stock advice, but I'm not going to give anyone personal stock advice or what stock to buy, blah blah blah. But yeah, I might start posting my stock holding online, maybe, just because I think that's interesting. I think it's something. And it does hold me accountable, and does make me think about what I'm buying and why I'm buying it, and I'll sort of talk about what the fuck I'm doing when I am buying. So yeah, basically do your research, learn books, read books. I'll leave a bunch of books in the show notes, like books about Warren Buffett, books by Warren Buffett. There's another book called The Intelligent Investor, Tony Robbins one, I forgot what it's called. I'll leave these all in the show notes, with links to them on Audible or links to them somewhere else. I personally use Audible because, say if you're traveling a lot, say if you do travel on the bus because you want to save money and, all that. You want to save money and not buy a car because it's a waste of money. Yeah, unless you need a car. Some people do need a car. And I know. When you're an adult, it's not a huge portion of your spending, but, it is, but it's not. Yeah. So, say if you're traveling a lot on the bus, you can then go and listen to an audiobook, because I'm never going to actually read on the bus. When I'm walking, I'm not going to read. I walk a lot just because I like to walk. I prefer to walk to the gym than do anything like that. So yeah, listen to your audiobooks and actually actively listen and actively learn, and then actively try it out. And if you are scared, just make a trial. Don't make I don't know how to make a trial account, but just make a fucking Google spreadsheet and pretend you have $10,000 in the bank. And how are you going to invest this money? And then you just play pretend, and you basically just do the maths. You buy $2,000 worth of this. How many shares is that? You figure out how many shares that is. Then you write it in your spreadsheet. Okay, so say you've got you minus the 2,000 from the 10,000. That's $8,000 left. But say you have 300 shares, which is worth 2,000. Basically, you track those shares as they go through the market, and you track what you would have done if that was reality. If that was real money. Make sure you account for, when you're at the very end and you've finished your experiment, account for inflation over the time period that you actually track that on. Do it on real stocks. Don't just play pretend. Just do it on real stocks. But, you can just pretend. And also account for transaction costs. Transaction costs is $30 every time you buy and $30 every time you sell. I think I'll probably finish off here because I am getting a cough and I don't want to, murder everyone's ears. So yeah. If you guys have any questions, I'd love if you would actually just message me on Instagram and say, James, what the fuck is this? What are you talking about? What is inflation, James? So yeah, just message me and be like, hey, James, what the fuck is that? And then I'll give you a good message. But if it's like, hey, James, what do I invest in? I'll be like, okay, go to the stock market and don't find a company you like, but find a company that you think is cool. So yeah. So message me on Instagram, Wonky Walshami or Walshami, whatever. Wonky Walshami is my one related to this podcast. I would also love if you would review the podcast, because that really does mean a lot to me, because I don't know if this podcast is good. I don't know, maybe it's the worst thing you've ever seen. Maybe it's absolutely horrible. I don't know. And if it is horrible, I'd like to know why, or maybe there's something about it that really pisses you off. Maybe I do this too much. Maybe I do that too much. Maybe that's fucking, like, really annoying. Or maybe I talk too fast. Or maybe I talk too slow. Like, maybe... So yeah, thank you guys very much for listening. I'd love if you'd follow the podcast. Check out my other episodes. I just did some really good ones. I did one with Sean Casey. That was a really good one. Nice and long. Had lots of good fatherly advice to give. I also did a great one with my Samuels. The audio was not that good, but the content was. So I think that's what matters, Yeah, hopefully we'll be doing another one with him. And we'll try to get the audio better. But yeah, thank you guys very much for listening and have a good night. Go invest. Don't just listen to this and then not take action. Go and start taking action. If you're fucking 13 years old, you save that paper round money. You save that. If you're 18 years old, you save up money ASAP. Get at least, start using Sharesies until you get to $2,000, and then open an account at your bank and start investing. Investing can all be done all through your bank. It's pretty easy. So check me out on Instagram, Facebook, subscribe to the podcast, and I'd love if you would leave a review. I also have a blog, but I never post there because I'm lazy and I don't really enjoy writing. I just want to talk on the fucking microphone. So yeah, thank you guys. Sorry if this was a bit of a weird one, and see you guys later.